Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nonye. Today I'll be showing us how to make a princess that Bustier dress with a front slit. It's going to be an off-shoulder dress. Okay, so I already have a video on how to draft the princess that Bustier blouse, but this is just for clarity purposes because I'll be adding some things I did not add to the previous video. Like I'll be padding this, I'll be showing us how to pad. Okay, so the measurements I'm taking now is from my shoulder to my chest line, my bust point, my underbust, and to the half length. Okay, so you can decide where you want your half length to be, either directly on your navel or 2 inches before your navel. Okay, so you mark your shoulder measurement, half of your shoulder measurement, then an extra 2 inches. Okay, all these have been explained in the previous video. Mark the same thing on the chest line and take it into a straight line. Okay, just so that you would have your lines correctly. Make sure you make it into a straight line. Okay, so on the bust point I mark half of my bust pan. On the underbust I subtract half inch from my bust pan, and also on the half length. Then I'll come down from the shoulder point by 5 inches, then connect it to the bust point, the underbust, and to the half length. Then on the underbust I'll take a dart of 2.5 inches. Yes, I'll also do the same thing to the waistline. Okay, then connect from the underbust to the bust point down to the other part of the shoulder. Okay, so another way to do this is to use your curve ruler and position it well so that you'll be able to touch the bust point and that other part of the shoulder, the extra 2 inches on the shoulder. Then you can now curve down to the underbust. Okay, so you just want to make sure you have a very smooth curve. Then you take in your measurements. Okay, so I'm marking my bust measurement on the chest line. Also include the little allowance or the space between the parts. Okay, so on the waistline I also mark quarter of my waist plus 2.5 inches seam allowance for the dart and 3 inches seam allowance. Okay, on the underbust I'll do the same thing. Divide my underbust measurement by 4 plus 2.5 inches dart allowance plus 3 inches seam allowance. Okay, so you make the connection from the bust to the underbust, then to the waistline. Okay, then the next thing for you to do is to draft your armhole from the other shoulder point down to where you have your exact waist bust measurement. Okay, so you can now cut. Now notice that I am not drafting any neckline. Like I said, this is going to be an off-shoulder dress. Okay, so I want to cut my neckline after joining the seams together, the sides, the center front and the side front together. Okay, and also my back pattern. So that is when I would want to draft out my neckline. Okay, so I'll cut through the dart now, starting from the waistline down to the underbust. Then make sure you curve your hand so you get a smooth curve for a bustier. Okay, it's usually very smooth, no sharp edges, so that you don't have your bustier pointy and poking at the bust point. So I also cut out the other dart leg. You also want to make sure that you curve your hands. Okay, that point is also not a straight line, so you cut down to the armhole, yes, on the shoulder line, then you take it up there. Yeah, okay, so this is what we have after cutting. You can see the smooth curve the bustier has. Okay, now you want to notch your bust point. Very, very important. Notch your bust point on the both sides, on the side front and on the center front, because joining your fabric you must make sure they match at the bust point. That's a sewing tip. Now make sure that it matches on the bust point so that you'll be able to get the accurate bustier shape. Okay, so these are the front pieces. Now to cut the back piece, I have a detailed video on my channel on how to make the back of a princess that. Please click on that post to watch the video. I'll also drop the link in the description box. Now I want to cut pad for my top. Okay, so I'm using wadding. I'm using a lightweight wadding. You can use a medium weight wadding or a heavyweight wadding. Okay, so it's sold in the market for around 500 to 900 naira in the Nigerian market. Okay, so you can get it and it can serve you for a very long time. You have to serve you for a long time. Okay, so I've placed my wadding into my fabric into my center front exactly now, because you cut the part for the center front and for the side pieces. So I'll place the bodice on the pad starting from the under bust. Okay, we are not padding it, or we're not padding all the parts of the blouse, just from the under bust, because it's a breast pad, so we're only padding the breast area or the bust area. So you trace the shape of the center front, just trace the sides where you cut out the dart, just trace it. Okay, then that's it, you just cut it out. Okay, also note that I am not extending my pad up to the shoulder point, because like I said, it's an off shoulder, and I'll be coming down for the off shoulder and all, and the neckline. So you wouldn't want your pad getting to that point, it would be a waste. So what you do is to place your wadding on your fabric, and it's fusible. You can get the fusible wadding, okay, and use your iron to pad it on the fabric, okay, before joining. All right, so for the side pieces, okay, you also get the wadding, fold it together, fold it in half, okay, because you want to cut the part for the two side pieces at the same time. Okay, so also place the fabric starting from the under bust as shown. Okay, remember, from the under bust you're padding the bust area, so you also start tracing the bustier shape. Okay, you want to make sure you get that accurately, so trace it down to the under bust, then you take it out. You can see that bustier shape there. Okay, so depending on how big you are, you can decide to do 5 to 6 inches for your pad. Remember, just make sure that it's not getting in the way of your seam allowance. So just measure what you have for your seam allowance, then mark it. Okay, so for the upper part, I want to come down by 2 inches, because I don't also want it to get to the armhole. So I'll just connect it to the down part. Okay, so this is how to draft the breast pad. It's so easy, it's very easy. Okay, so you also cut out. This has posed a lot of challenges to some people, so I'm sure this would help us know how to cut a breast pad. Subsequently, I'll post more videos on how to make a straight bustier blouse. Okay, so one thing is to know where your padding should be placed. Okay, so on the bustier shape, okay, I'm making a mark. Okay, then also to the point on the under bust, I'm also making a mark, because the pad looks the same, the sides look the same, so that you will know where to place exactly on your under bust. Okay, or on that bustier shape. So you can see this marked side goes to the side of the pattern, and the other part is for the down part. Okay, so you don't, and you use your iron to fuse it together. You don't want to place this wrongly, okay, so that it would give you a nice fit. So I'll also do the same thing for the other side. Make sure I'm placing the marked parts, okay, and make sure you place on the wrong side of your fabric. It is not on the right side, please, on the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, my fabric has the front and back parts. Okay, so the next video you'll be seeing is how to cut the skirt pattern. Okay, so for the skirt pattern, I folded my fabric into two. Okay, and like I've also marked all my lines from the shoulder, from the waist to the hip, to the knee, to the length of the dress, plus 2 inches seam allowance for foldings. Okay, now I've also gone ahead to make a 1 inch mark from the center front down to the hem. This is going to serve as allowance for my front slit. Remember I said my dress is going to have a front slit, so this 1 inch is going to serve as allowance for my slit. So on the waistline, I mark quarter of my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 3 inches. That's 1 inch for that. On the hip line, I mark quarter of my hip measurement plus 2 inches. Then on the knee line, I subtract 1.5 inches from the hip measurement and also mark that on the hemline. Okay, so on the waistline, I mark my bust span measurement starting from the 1 inch mark we made. Okay, so that's the bust span measurement plus 1 inch, because we'll be needing allowance for cutting because we'll cut through the slit. Okay, now note, this is optional. You can decide not to do this because by the time, except you can do this if you're placing your slit on the right side, or yes, on the right hand side. Okay, but if your slit is going to be at the left hand side, you don't need to do this. Okay, so now I want to cut out my fabric. Okay, so from the hemline, you cut up onto the knee, up to the hip and to the waist. Remember I added my dart allowance. Okay, all right, so that's the front pattern. For the skirt part, we're going to join this skirt part to the peplum, sorry, to the bustier we've made already. Okay, so if you want to have your slit by the side, by the right side, you can just cut through this line I made here, then join it back together. You would have your on the outside. Okay, so like I said, if you're going to have your slit on the right side, just cut out through this part. Okay, but I want to have my slit on the left side. It looks better on the left side, so I'll open my fabric up, okay, so that I'll be able to cut for the slit. Okay, so now for you to be able to cut the slit, you fold back your fabric in half. Just fold it back into two. Okay, then you want to notch your dart point and that 1 inch allowance you gave for the dart. Okay, so just notch the 1 inch allowance for the dart. Okay, that will help you determine where the center front is. Okay, because when you open up, except you're working with light, you can iron that part, so the crease will show you, but I'm just notching it here so we will know where that point is. Okay, so I'll also fold it back. Okay, so I also want to mark the other parts of the notch parts. Okay, this is one part, this is the second part, because by the time I notch, I have my notches in two places because I folded it into two. Okay, so I want to mark that so that it will be clear, because I wasn't sure if you see my notch. Okay, so from that point, okay, okay, so on from that notched part, I would mark my dart point. Okay, from that point, from that notched part, I'll mark half of my bust span. Okay, then connect it with a straight ruler down to the hem. Okay, remember I started from the other part of the dart leg and I marked my bust span measurement. Okay, for my bust span, which is my dart line. Okay, so I also mark an extra 1 inch there, because I don't want to cut on my exact dart line. Okay, Okay, so now I want to draw out this line. This is the center front. Okay, I'm just drawing it out so that it doesn't confuse us, it doesn't get in the way of what we are marking. Okay, so from that point, by the time you measure for the other part, you see that you have your measurements equally. You have quarter of your waist plus the 3 inches that allowance. Okay, so you can see it's enough. So that is the center, that is the side. Okay, so we can now focus on the other side because we are sure this part is in order. Okay, so you remember we marked 1 inch for the slit allowance, so by the time you open it up, it will become 2 inches. So I'm marking that 2 inches here now, just so that we will know it's just for allowance. Okay, just for allowance for joining your slit. Okay, so from there you also measure that point. Okay, that's your that point. Okay, then you use a straight ruler to connect it. Okay, so you also want to make sure that that is corresponding. So there I have my dart point. Okay, so the dart point is 4.5. Okay, that is where I have my dart point, 4.5. Okay, so after that 4.5, I'll now mark that extra 2 inches I'm supposed to have for this slit. So in between the 2 inches is where I'll place my slit. I don't want it to be very confusing, but just take time and watch the video. Okay, so it's a bit technical. Just take time and maybe play the video back again so you understand better. Okay, so once you've done that, okay, so that is where I'll cut out. Now the extra 1 inch on both sides will not be the allowance to join the slit. That means we've incorporated these 2 inches we have here. That 2 inches, we will now incorporate it into the seam allowance. Okay, so by the time you also decide to measure, okay, you can now see that we also have quarter of our waist measurements plus 3 inches, which is what we're supposed to have. So by the time we cut out the darts and join, excluding these 2 inches, we'll be able to have our exact measurement back. Okay, so please take time to rewatch the video. Okay, so you cut through. Okay, so cutting through to the top. Okay, so this is going to be your front piece. Okay, so you have 1 inch on both sides of that slit to join. That's the essence of the 1 inch we added to the pattern or your fabric. Okay, now I'll show you joining tip. Okay, but then you have to mark where you want your slit to start from. Okay, so you can make it start like 2 inches before your knee line. I've already marked my knee line, so this is like 2 inches before my knee line. This is to give you room to walk freely. Okay, because if it's directly on your knee, you might not be able to walk properly. But if you want to conceal, that much, okay, you can just leave it at your knee line, but please make sure it doesn't go beyond the knee line. Okay, so that you can move properly. So you fold it, you place them together and sew on 1 inch down to where you have your 2 inches before the knee line. Okay, so I'll just use my pin to demonstrate that. Okay, but you'll be sewing on your fabric. Right, so I'll just pin it all through, all the way down to where I want my slit to start. Okay, so if you're making this without lining, okay, I'll show you how you can sew up your slit without lining. But if you would be making this with lining, I'll also post the sewing video or even tips on how to join it. Okay, so I've pinned down to there. Okay, so I just want to mark that point and also pin it down. Okay, so you are pinning on 1 inch exactly, at exactly 1 inch. Okay, All right, so we put in the last pin. Okay. All right, so after sewing, by the time you open it up, okay, you, as you can see, you've already concealed the other part. Now for the from the place your slit to start from to the hem, you now fold it into two. Okay, you fold half inch and another half inch, that would take up the 1 inch. Okay, just fold it into two. Okay, so that is why you need your 1 inch slit allowance. Okay, so I'm still using my pin, okay, to hold it. So fold it into two. Yes, the first fold and the second fold, then pin. So all these places I'm pinning, you would sew them down. Now you are doing this, okay, this method. If you're working with a heavyweight fabric and you don't want to use lining, you can, let's say fabrics like scuba, poly, or even just, yes, maybe jean fabric or fabrics that you wouldn't need lining on. Okay, so you just do it this way for your slits. Okay, but if you're working with ankara like this fabric I'm working with, that I'll be needing to add the lining just for, firmness, and so that, because the dress might be a bit transparent. Okay, so I'll also show you how you would attach lining to it, or even give you the tips on how to join it. Okay, so fold in half and fold into two again, then you pin. Okay, so now note you want to be pinning on yours, but you'll be sewing it down, but you can still pin, okay, just so that it will help you hold down the fabric while you sew. Okay, so you can see our slit now, it's so nice. Okay, so this is how to make it. Okay, so on the part you sewed, you just iron it. Okay, so you can see the inside, that's how fine it's going to be. You just iron. Then for the back, you just cut exactly what you have here, but you'll be adding your zip allowance for the back. Okay, you wouldn't be having a back slit. Then to the other side, you now fold and sew your dart. Remember that part also has that allowance. Okay, so you now sew your dart. Okay, so if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.